hit record and we're live. Greetings to the
Sounds
listeners.
Great. Hey, everyone.
Hey, yeah, today's guest is Lucas, and you have to tell me how to truly pronounce your artist name, because otherwise I would say it wrong. That would be super weird.
Absolutely. It's kind of a mouthful. It's Cornerian Flight Academy.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah. Cornerian
Flight Academy.
You got it. Yep.
Perfect. And yeah, I would say let's dive into your latest release in the first moment, because in the last few episodes I kind of get right into the talk, and then the intro of the podcast came like 10 minutes into it. That was super weird. And the track that you released last is Snowy Vibes. I'm gonna play it real quick for the listeners.
Okay, perfect.
I really like the build-up in the beginning. It's actually for me always kind of tricky to get that Foley noises ambience volume right. This one hits it perfect to be like on top, to give it that super retro feeling, but is not too loud to really mess with the ears. And Snowy Vibes is such a fitting name for it. It's got this winter vibe.
No, I'm glad to hear that, right? And I think like when I was making the track, I can't remember who it was, but it was some lo-fi producer, and they were talking about making, seasonal music. And a lot of the times when you make seasonal music, especially as a producer, you're making it outside of the season. Mm-hmm. So like the advice that they provided was just like envision a piece, like envision something from that season. Mm-hmm. When that really brings back those memories. So I think like, for example, if it's summer and you're making a Halloween track, well, what's like in preparation for Halloween? Like what's a core memory you have of Halloween, and make that track. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I did with this track. Like growing up, I remember sitting like, we had a big window that looked out onto the street, and one of the things I always did growing up was I would sit at the window, kind of press my nose to the glass, watch snow fall down in the street light, and it's just a very core memory. So when I was making that track, I'm like, okay, like let's like envision this memory, feel that vibe, mm-hmm. and then try to create a track around it. And so I'm glad to hear that, at least from your perspective, it seems like that hits.
It really hits, and I don't know what exact sounds you use for the ambience, but it got me that that crispy noise when like snow hits on snow. You know what I mean? When it snows and hits on something.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's the thing with noises. I guess in the mood that you are in, you can interpretate a lot in it. Like this one Instagram video or TikTok video that is always coming up in my page. Like they say something completely ununderstandable, and there are like a list of words, and whatever you're reading, this you hear then in that moment. But yeah, you really hit that seasonal theme. When did you produce that? That would be an interesting thing.
Yeah, this one came out towards the end of the year. If I remember right, I was producing this one probably like September, October.
Okay.
Um, this one might have also been well, I'm sure we'll get into this briefly, but so I use Ableton as my DAW.
Hmm.
But then recently I've been starting a lot of tracks on a phone-based DAW called Koala.
Okay.
Um, so this might have been one of those ones where like I got the bones of it created in Koala, and then I pulled it into Ableton. Yeah, and I think like one of the like tricks, like you're talking about, like the ambiance in the background. So like one of the tricks that I do is like, of course, everyone's got vinyl crackle and whatnot, like for the most part, right?
Hmm.
Um, but I also, and some people do this too, but I do a lot of like wind noise,
Yeah.
and I do a lot of street noise, and I do a lot of like stream noise, like a pond, like a water stream coming
Mm.
through. And if you pair that, and you're talking about like the crunchiness, if you pair that with like a little bit of like an overdrive towards the top end, you can get that really nice crunchiness. But you got to
Oh.
be careful because with lo-fi, right, too much high
Yeah.
end isn't great. So it's kind of a you got to be really careful.
But that's a great thing. I hear it for the first time. Like I'm putting some, yeah, like some distortion on the noises. I usually just leveling them, and then I throw the ozone imager on top and make it like all
Mm.
over the place. So it's just not fighting with the actual track. And what I also realized is just add it after the master of the beat and not mastering those sounds really was a big game changer on get the levels right, because you can have them
Yeah.
as quiet as possible when it comes to mastering, and the compressor boosts like all the frequencies, then it's super loud and annoying. And when you then try to duck them down with the EQ, it's, yeah, you kill all the other high end.
Yeah. No, absolutely. High end's just, especially after you do the mastering process, high end can be tricky, right? You can have a
Mm,
snare that's just like, oh, like it's too loud, and you turn it down a ton and it's fine. And then you
mm,
master and you do all your mastering stuff. And it's like, wow, how come it's too loud again? So it's
mm.
like there's something about the mastering process, depending on what yours looks like, that could really bring out those frequencies and make them pop when you don't want them to.
Yeah. Hey, and it's really funny about producing a song for a season. I once did a song in around December. It was last year. And here in my town in Switzerland, Lucerne, you have always around Christmas, like for the last 4 years, as I remember, a very heavy fog in the night. And
Mm,
it's kind of, yeah, around Christmas, New Year. And it's super mystical. It's like perfect Halloween weather. And I remember I was out for Sylvester last year,
okay.
celebrated a bit. Then I walked home 5 a.m. in the morning. It was dark, the streets were empty, and the fog was so thick. The next day, I produced a song that sounds super dark and very spooky.
Yeah.
And yeah, I released that song in February, and like more than half a year later on Halloween, it got added to several Halloween playlists and had a super nice peak out of nowhere. The song was not streamed at all for like half a year, and then it just like blew up. That's super funny.
Halloween, yeah, Halloween's really an interesting seasonal holiday, and it's something that like it wasn't my intention, but it's something that like my most popular, so to say, streaming period is Halloween and the months around it,
Hmm.
because I happen to get on a playlist a couple of years back that's a single person, that's a lovely person that just had a playlist that
Hmm.
started growing and they started curating it. And so every Halloween season, that's when I see a lot of my peak, right?
Hmm.
And I don't know, there's something about lo-fi and Halloween that just hits for a lot of people
Yeah.
during that, listening season. Um, so yeah, for sure. That's similar to me, where like I produced a song that was Halloweeny, nothing really happened, and then the next year, like some people put it on their playlist and it started growing.
Hmm. Yeah. interesting with Halloween, because actually I never imagined that Halloween would be this holiday for lo-fi. First, it was for me, it was always around Christmas.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it's the vibe of people that don't want to go outside in the cold, just stay at home playing Animal Crossing and having a cozy winter, like with the heater turned fully up.
Yeah.
Very interesting topic. And for this podcast, as I told you before, when we chatted quick before of the recording, I prepared the first time like some questions for the artist, just so the people can get to know you better. Because with basic introductions, it's kind of always the same thing. And I thought about from now on, I will like pick some random questions that have to do something with music, sometimes completely not. And yeah, let's find something out about you.
Okay, I love it. Let's go.
The first question that I wrote down is, what was your first favorite band or musician back in since you discovered music? Like the very first one.
Okay, yeah. So this is a really interesting question for me, because I've been, I've dabbled in music pretty much most of my life in one way or another, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in elementary school, before I started dabbling in music, ironically enough, I wasn't really big into music. I didn't really listen to a ton of music. I didn't really care too much for it. And so ironically, one of the first artists that I really fell in love with was Weird Al Yankovic.
Nice.
Yeah. So I didn't necessarily like music, but I loved parodies of music, right? Just the goofiness, the silliness of it. And, as someone who's like 9, 10, like Weird Al Yankovic was the best, right? But then the irony is like through Weird Al Yankovic, I started falling in love with all the tracks he covered, right? So I'd go discover I'd be like, okay, well, his cover track is really great. And honestly, if you've ever seen Weird Al live, like his band is amazing and they're just excellent musicians, right? And they cover stuff really well. But then you go discover the original track, and you're like, well, this is good too. So it's kind of like Weird Al Yankovic came first, and then like my first, like I'd say like formal band that wasn't parody was probably Red Hot Chili Peppers, which is a very American answer. But I grew up playing drums, and I always kind of had a little bit of a funky style when I would play, and so I had a drum instructor who's like, you seem to really like stuff that's a little funkier. Have you heard of Red Hot Chili Peppers? So a lot of like my core drumming memories were learning Red Hot Chili Peppers tracks, and the drummer, I believe Chad Smith, is just phenomenal. So a lot of my teeth were cut on like Chad Smith drumming.
I couldn't agree more. It's a fantastic band. I'm a big fan. It was I guess my second CD that I bought was the Stadium Arcadium one. It was what is it called in America? Like the first school that you go in after kindergarten? Is that
like elementary, probably?
Elementary. Okay, yeah. It was like in the 5th grade of elementary, and first album I still listen to it a ton. It was Billy Talent 2, and the second album that I bought was the Stadium Arcadium one. And it's kind of this super cool experience back then. You got a two CD package of an album, and they just put out so many songs on one album. You don't see that anymore in this time and age.
You don't. Yeah, I mean, things are faster now. At least that's my perspective. Like things seem to be faster, and like content seems to be more digestible. And I like the need to have it digest easily, right? And so yeah, there's still people that put out full albums, but less so nowadays. And I think like even my own production, it's like if I'm making a song and it's over like 4 or 5 minutes, my brain's like, this is too much. Cut it in half, right? Yeah. So we're in a social media era where like you got like things come at you fast, and then you got to get down to the idea quick. So you're right, you don't see that as much.
For me, that's such a big, how do I say, super hard knowledge or just a big skill to make songs that are like 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 9 minutes, and to keep them overall interesting. That's
Yeah.
really hard. And those artists that make this happen, or also make an album with 5 tracks that are over 7 minutes, that's like geniuses for me. I really look up to such artists. But yeah, I can agree that also like 5 years ago, I could easily listen to a song for 9 minutes. And even 10 years ago, I had some super experimental music discovered, some kind of drone music, and yeah, like really hypnotizing music that went for one song 25 minutes.
Oh yeah, okay.
I cannot listen to that anymore. It's super weird how social media changed our brains or the structure of our hormones to just get bored so quick.
It really is how like weird how it's done that. And I think like at the same time, what's interesting as we're talking about this, and I'm thinking like, I didn't really mention, I mean, you mentioned Billy Talent, which is like, oh yeah, Billy Talent's, I love Billy Talent growing up. But yeah, punk is another formative genre for me growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's funny how like social media has changed a lot, but like, when you look into punk, like 1 minute, 2 minute songs have always been a common trend, right?
Yeah.
So there's also like some genres, like with punk, it's like, I don't know, I've said what I needed to say. It was at 180 BPM, we're done, and a minute into the song.
Yeah, and on live it's so funny because then there's like this destructive vibe, super all over the place. I love that. And even as a crowd, you're going full in. It's kind of like a rave, but just with different kind of music. And then after the song, I really loved it when the bands like took a minute to talk about something, just to like take some breaths before it continues. Great. Then let's lead to the second question. Are you singing in the shower or in the car? Do you have these karaoke sessions?
Yeah, so I don't sing as much in the shower, but absolutely in the car. I've always sung in the car, whether it's to whatever's on the radio, like pop music on the radio, whether it's to like a CD I have in, because I still have a car that's got a CD player, and every once in a while you pull those CDs out and it's nostalgic to slip one in.
Nice.
But yeah, so yeah, I've always been a car singer.
Yeah,
how about you?
Me too.
Yeah.
Not in the shower at all, but in the car, it's great. Because I think we both need that background music to sing along with. Yeah. Because I guess there are people just like hop in the shower without music and just start singing something. I'm not like that at all. Okay. And then the next one is, what is one food that you could not live without?
Ooh, this is tricky. Because it's changed over time. I'd say at the moment, and within the last year or two, for some reason I've been eating so many peanuts and so much peanut butter.
Okay.
I guess I've been on like a little bit of like a protein kick, like a lot of the world has, and like peanut and peanut butter has been like an easy protein source for me that like is tasty and goes with a lot of stuff. So I consume a lot of it.
That's great.
How about you?
Yeah, I'm also on the protein tour, but for me it's kind of special because for background information, in the ages of 17 to 27, I lived completely vegetarian and 1 year vegan. And since last year, I start to eat meat from time to time again. And now for me, it's like a duck. We have one takeaway place, and I end up always thinking on the road to there, so what I'm gonna pick this time, and 9 out of 10 times it's the duck. And I really, after like a hard leg day training, that's just the best.
Duck is so tasty, and I
Yeah.
did. I was on the West Coast for a couple of years, and I was kind of like, I called it vegan-ish,
Hmm.
where it's like I always ate a little bit of meat because at the end of the day, like I'm gonna have to go visit family and I'm gonna eat a ton of meat.
Hmm.
So I always wanted to be like my body to be used to eating meat. But yeah, I do remember like when I was vegan-ish, like the like duck was always a really lovely treat.
Yeah, it's great. And it's funny, we have a word for this here in Europe. They call it flexitarian.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, mhm.
I don't know if you have this word over in
Yeah,
America
yeah,
too, but
yeah,
I heard it so often, especially in the years that I was strictly on the vegetarian diet, and I never really made a topic out of that. Just like I didn't order, and sometimes friends ask me like, "Yeah, you always order the vegetarian stuff," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's how I eat." And they
yeah.
like, "Oh yeah," and then they always brought up this topic, and I like, I was like, I don't care at all. It's for me, it was never how do I say, philosophical topic.
Yeah.
It was a bit, but not like to. I never had that urge to discuss it with something. Everybody should do what they want to do as long as it's,
Yeah.
let's say, legal and not harming other people.
No, absolutely. And when it comes to like how people eat, and specifically once you think about like people that are eating vegetarian or vegan or whatnot, like everyone's reason for doing so is so different, right?
Mm,
And that like even with my spouse and I, like we both had different reasons for eating for going vegan, right?
mm.
And I talked to other vegans, and some people like have really intense reasons why, and some people are just like, I don't know, I eat this way and it makes my body feel better.
Yeah.
Simple, right?
Yeah, it is. It is totally like that. So you should actually just listen to your body and
Yeah.
not listen to the social media aspect, because everybody wants to sell you his point of view as the only truth,
Yeah.
but that's never gonna work out. We are so individual, and so is the biochemistry of our bodies. For some
Yeah.
people, they feel the best when they are fully vegan. Some people feel the best when they are fully carnivore. And
Yeah.
there should be room for all of this, in my
No,
opinion.
absolutely. No, absolutely. And I would say, of course, like it really depends on where people are in their life, what they're able to access as far as resources go. But like in 2024, I started going to a dietitian, and
Oh,
I'd say
interesting.
for anyone who has who has the ability or the privilege to access one, I'd say do it, right? Because like
Mm,
whether you're trying to meet goals or gains or not, like it doesn't matter. Like a dietitian's a lovely for mental health, a
mhm,
therapist is great. But like a dietitian's a lovely partner to have as you
mhm,
figure out like what your journey is in life, at least with food goes. And as you get older, I'm in my 30s now, right? So like things change, like your
mhm.
body changes, how stuff digests, all that stuff changes, right?
Yeah.
So like that's definitely like one of my big lessons learned from 2024. That was like getting a dietitian and sticking with them was a great idea, and I'm definitely going to keep it up.
You just you just took away the last question from the list. What was
Oh,
your biggest learning from last year? But okay, we have this one checked. That's great.
I got a lot of lessons. I have a lot of stuff I could share on like takeaways from life. So you're good
Okay,
on that.
then I ask it again
Yeah.
later. Great. Then let's move on from food to back to the childhood. What was
Yeah.
your first favorite TV show?
Interesting. There's so many good ones.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a hard one.
my favorite. You know, I'll throw a curveball in here, right? So of course I watched a lot of cartoons growing up. Hence some of like my name. So Cornerian Flight
Mm.
Academy. If you're familiar with with the video game Star Fox,
I heard
it's
about
from
it, but never played it.
okay.
I
Okay,
know the
yeah.
character from Smash Bros.
Yep, absolutely. So Star Fox, he's a character in Smash Bros.
Hmm.
But also like originally it's like he's like a pilot.
Hmm.
And it's eventually a bunch of animal pilots that fly fighter jets and take things down, right? But essentially the academy that they went to, like when they were learning how to fly, is called Cornerian Flight Academy, right? So like I say that to the point to say like I've always kind of been a cartoon guy, and even the music I make nowadays is influenced by that. But maybe a little bit of a curveball, so that like something that you wouldn't expect. Honestly, the show that that really defines a lot of my childhood was there was a show on MTV called Pimp My Ride.
Oh, that was a
Yes.
great one.
Yes. Yeah. And for those who are not familiar, essentially like you take someone's car and you surprise them. And then usually it's like a car that's pretty beat up, not worth a lot of money, and they transform it, right? And they transform it in like the most comical, ridiculous ways, right? Someone will be like, "Oh, you like coffee? Great. Well, we like turned your car into a mobile coffee shop."
Yes,
like, what?
exactly.
Why? But I've always been a car person growing up, and as a kid, I thought it was so cool. And like, so one of my dreams was like, when I grow older, I'm going to customize cars, right?
Yeah.
That's not what ended up happening. But like growing up, I was just enthralled with Pimp My Ride. And I was at an age where I didn't realize how comical and how ridiculous it was. I just thought like, this is so cool. They're modifying cars. And they weren't ever doing like rarely were they doing something good with it. It's like, oh, well, they're not switching out the engine. They're not fixing any of the issues with the car. Maybe they are, but they weren't showing that. It's just like cosmetically, we're making this car great, but like we're actually not making it a better car.
Also, the designs from the outside with all that colorful styles looked amazing, and then they end up like building in like huge music machines or video game consoles and a flat screen, or was it flat screens back then or just? I guess like the first versions, kind of it. They were not that flat as today, but like this thick.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. They'd be like, "Hey, so you know that trunk? I hope you don't have to cart anything around because we put a TV in it, an Xbox, and a bunch of speakers. Isn't that cool?" And they're like, "Yeah, thanks, dude."
And most of them probably end up getting a second car for like their daily business and keep that as for fun.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great show. That's truly a great show. Let me check my list. I have to like kind of get over my handwriting. Oh, that's an interesting question. Back in the days, I remember for me it was like also the first experience like in that would be actually the high school, I guess, after the elementary school.
Yeah, it goes like high school, junior high, or middle school, and then, it goes elementary school, junior high, and or middle school, and then high school, at least as far as America goes.
Okay, we have this two thing system. The one is like you make 6 years in the first one, and then you make a 3-year old school making an apprenticeship, or the longer one where you can go study afterwards.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I know when like the love for music really manifested itself and you were a broke kid, have you ever illegally downloaded CDs and music and stuff? I know.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
Who did not?
Yeah, I think the reality is like most people were at one point in time, and if you weren't, like most cases are like you had a friend that was, or like they were giving you a CD or whatnot. I mean, I think like as you know, like in the like as a small independent music producers, like it's easy to be frustrated with streaming services. I think Spotify is an example of that because of like the compensation that you do or don't get from it. But I think there is a reality in which like Spotify, for example, provided a means to an ends, right? I think
Yeah.
Napster started first, where like, if I, maybe I'm wrong on my timeline, but Napster used to be illegal and then they went legal, right? And then
Yes.
Spotify kind of took over that model. So there's the reality is that like back in the day, like people were getting free stuff all the time.
Hmm.
And so now it's like, it's not too much different. It's just that like I'm paying a monthly fee to listen to as much as I want,
Yeah.
right?
And when this came up, I was super fascinated about this. It was also, I guess, in the first year when I went to the apprenticeship, and then
Yeah.
got like some money in, and then this $13 was super affordable to listen to everything you like. But yeah, I remember a schoolmate showing me like LimeWire was the name of the program,
Yep.
and you could download a lot of music or movies and tons of viruses and malware and all that stupid stuff that broke down your computer.
Yeah, I remember growing up. So there was a point in time where I was kind of like DJing like house parties. I'd have people over at my house and I'd do a dance party, right?
Mhm.
Like in high school. And so there's a ton of music that I was trying to that I was getting, right. Some of it I was buying it, some of it you were finding on sites like this. But it was always funny because occasionally like you'd like drop like, oh hey, here's a new Kanye West song, or here's a new Lil Wayne song, and at that beginning it would be like DJ Premiere, and it's like some sample that someone ripped from something, put it on LimeWire, and then like put it up. So it's like, and you could tell like when someone had acquired a song because there sometimes was like funny timestamps because they just ripped it off of LimeWire.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned DJing. I used to organize parties for like 3 years. And
Okay, yeah.
in the one club that I was organizing the party, I instantly could hear if someone got like beats ripped from YouTube or something, because they did had no pressure on the bass, and that was when it starts getting boring in the club.
Yeah.
That for me it was like a complete no-go. As a commercial DJ, let's say you also get a DJ fee to play, and yeah, then I really could recognize the rip-offs. Was like
Yeah.
some years ago.
It is. I do remember that, right? Like sometimes you get like a really bad quality ripoff, and like there's no bass and there's tons of artifacting in the track. But yeah, you're right. I can totally see that. Like as a DJ, like whether it's like electronic music or pop music, or honestly lo-fi, like bass has a really important place, right? They have an important place for different reasons. But like with electronic music, like I made dubstep for years and years and years,
That's
right?
amazing.
And that low end was so crucial, right? And getting it just right, and everyone had their own tricks for doing it, is such a big piece. Because if you don't feel like your whole soul is shaking when the bass hits in dubstep, then like in most cases, depending on the dubstep subgenre, like it's not going to feel right.
Yeah, the crowd don't go crazy to a song that sounds super flat. It doesn't even have to be a rip-off. It's only just the comparison from a high-quality MP3 to a lossless wave.
Yeah.
Felt so much different in the club.
Absolutely. And that's like, I think as someone who's experienced DJ and you being the same way, like, I think without knowing how DJing works, sometimes it's easy to be like, oh, well, all they're doing is like, like pressing play. But the reality is like, no, there's a lot of back end happening, right? And like exactly what you're saying, like the bass on one track might be different. So there's a lot of EQing that the DJ is doing live to make sure stuff flows well.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, that back end stuff that I think people don't necessarily always know is happening to make your club going experience truly, enjoyable.
Yeah. That's true. I can remember me one time when having a DJ playing like MP3 songs. I went to the decks and turned up the low end to the fullest, and then you could see like the crowd went crazy, and it didn't oversaturate or nothing, because it got this headroom in the production or just on the MP3. that it was totally fine. It
Yeah.
wasn't like, you know how it is when you turn it up way too loud and then it starts like getting distorted and weird. That
Yeah,
wasn't the case.
absolutely.
Cool. Cool. If you had a superpower, that's a classic one. What would it be?
Yeah. I love this question. Because I love this question, you know, because I like to talk about it, but more importantly, I love to hear what other people's superpowers are.
Hmm.
And I'll answer the question, and then maybe I have like a little bit of like a you know, just like a diversion to go on. But so first, answering the question. So my favorite superpower, like if I could pick one, would be the ability to control time, right?
Oh,
And some of it is
interesting.
just like I think like it might make life more interesting, right? Like you could try things over, be like, oh, hey, let's see what happens if I do something like this, right? Oh, well, that didn't really work. Well, let's try again, right?
Hmm.
And the other reason is I think like it'd be kind of fun to like mess with people and just like make life more lighthearted. Like, hey, let me move your glass, or let me move this or that, or right, like, and like,
So
but
you
there's
would
also
end up trolling people with this ability.
yeah,
Someone wants
so
to reach for a glass, you're like, pause the time, move the glass like
move
five
it,
minutes.
right?
Okay.
But then but at the end of the day, like I'm really a people person and I love people.
Yeah.
So like I'd feel guilty and I'm like, well, that was kind of not so nice, wasn't it? So I'm like, okay, well, let's rewind time and like undo that. Like because you'd probably mess with people and then they'd feel bad sometimes, and I'd feel bad that I did that. So it's like, okay, well, let's redo.
Hmm.
How about you?
Um, I I hardly try to remember the name of that movie, but like teleporting.
Yeah,
This one movie where the guys could like teleport everywhere they have seen a picture or was before.
yeah,
That would be so fascinating. Like get a quick trip to the beach where it's hot in the winter, like make that and you're there and enjoying the sun and 30 degrees, going for a swim. That would be
yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm thinking of the same movie, but I cannot remember its
Jumper,
name.
could it be?
Maybe, oh, Jumper. Yeah, Jumper. I
Yeah.
was thinking of a movie where like all like the dads and the mom, like only the males in the family could do that. But Jumper, yeah, that's a great movie.
And they got hunted by like some hunters for them
That's
because
right.
they end up robbing banks and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I
Um,
always thought this movie really inspired me. Like, oh, that would be the coolest superpower, even if you just use it for fun stuff. Like I
yeah.
just told, going to the beach when it's here -5 degrees and snowy.
You know, it's funny because like this maybe reveals a little bit about like who I am outside of music production, right? But
Mhm.
so outside of music, like I do a lot of like energy work, climate work. I've done some transportation electrification
Mhm.
work. So like there's a piece of my mind that's like the amount of energy that we use to get from point A to point B. I'm
Mhm.
like, what if we could just teleport? Like we
Oh,
would
yeah,
like we
interesting.
could probably solve for a lot of the emission issues we have,
Mhm.
right? Depending on how the teleportation works, right? But I'm like, wow, we could really solve for a lot of the issues we're having if we could just teleport and we didn't have to fly or drive anywhere.
Yeah, or like set up teleportation points in a city. Like
Yeah,
instead of having trains or buses, you have multiple stops. There's a box. You just pick the location you want to go, and
yeah.
you're there
It's
in
like a video
seconds.
game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like this warpoints in video games. Like you could
yeah,
instantly go to a place. But I
yeah.
bet if that would be a real thing, there's 1000% of chance that like someone who's inventing that just get like super rich and it will be a kind of expensive experience.
It it does sound expensive. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think that this would be available for like the majority of the people. If this would be invented, I really don't think in the state that we live or how the
yeah.
world works now, it's kind of unimaginable just to make it accessible for everyone,
Yeah.
obviously. And then we would still stuck with the same problems. Or maybe if like someone like Elon Musk thinks, okay, let's invent that, and I really want to cut the emissions of everything, and I make it available for everyone to a normal price, like he did with
Sure.
his internet Starlink
Oh,
experiment.
that's right. Yep.
And that's a really cool thing that he did to make internet accessible for everyone for a normal price.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that kind of does get to like as we're talking about this teleportation and like, well, what if there's a certain extent like I work remote from home for my job, like outside of music production, and I know a lot more people do now, especially after COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some realities where it's like, but haven't we technically already did that? Like to a certain extent, like I don't have to go to work. I sign onto my computer at home and I've teleported myself to work, right? So there's interesting things that have happened with like internet's an excellent
Mm-hmm.
example that like teleports you somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, um, but something I'm curious about though. So you bring up superpowers, right? And so I'm a really big like in my work life, and honestly, sometimes like in my personal lifetime, sometimes like I really like to focus on like what good things do people bring to the table,
Mm-hmm.
especially in a job. Sometimes people focus on like, well, you did this right, but you did all these things wrong. So
Mm-hmm.
let's improve what you did wrong. But I really like to lead life where it's like, no, like what does someone do well? What is their like superpower at work, and how do we make a team of a bunch of different
Yeah.
superpowers and focus on what people are doing right?
This totally
So
makes sense.
yeah, because like at the end of the day, like then it's not like, oh, you're bad at this, let's fix that. It's like, no, you're really good at this, let's do this. So something I would love to hear like
Mm-hmm.
from your perspective is like, what do you think your like not like what do you think your like human superpower is, right?
Oh, human superpower. That's interesting. I would
Yeah, that you
say
currently have.
I would say it sounds probably super weird, but I feel this way for my life since I was a child. If it comes to learn new skills, no matter what, like the learning curve to get a decent job done is super fast.
Okay,
But
yeah.
then the negative side of this is after getting there super fast, the motivation to do more to get like this last 20% polished
Yeah.
instantly go like down like this.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, and I could relate as someone that, like I absorb a lot of information, and yeah, sometimes the polish is tricky, right? And so it's at least it's like when I think about like that, like that's a really great superpower to have as a human, right? Like you're able to absorb a bunch of content, get really good at it. And it's like in my mind, I'm like, okay, great. Well, is there someone else that could take it the final 20%? And then like, let's send you off to do something different, right? And learn
Mhm.
something different. Like that's where my mind goes, because that's such a cool superpower to have as a human, to be able to absorb and get good at stuff quickly.
I love reading, it's
Yeah.
or just listening to all kind of podcasts. That's what also motivated me to do one. Is I end up listening to so many different podcasts, from the comedy aspect to super deep ones with like interesting topics. I guess it was 2 weeks ago. I listened to like 5 episodes of a guy talking about just how we can communicate better and leading to a better understanding with
Yeah.
in every aspect of life, like family wise, business wise, in relationships and all that. And that was super fascinating to me, even though I never really had a thought about that. I never had the idea, okay, let's get on this topic and learn that. It just
Yeah.
came up totally random, because like with YouTube Premium, you can also have videos played in background when your phone is
Oh,
turned off. And
that's right.
because I work in a super small company, we are 3 people, electricians, and
Okay.
usually I work alone. So I just put on headphones and listen to podcasts or just like videos about or interviews are also great.
Yeah.
I kind of love knowledge, no matter about what.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like I started absorbing knowledge. I think I don't know, maybe 5, 10 years doing the podcast train as well. And yeah, I don't know. There's something about humans where like there's an innate desire to absorb information too.
Mhm.
And I say humans, but I say like creatures, right? Like I see the
Yeah,
same thing with my dog, right? Like my like dog, like a dog, like the old adage that like old dogs can't learn new tricks. Totally not true. My
yeah,
dog is always down to learn a new trick. So there's something about like creatures on at least on our planet, right? That like there's a desire to
yeah,
absorb more information, learn more, and it makes sense why podcasts like feed into that desire so well.
definitely. And there's this one sentence of a super intelligent guy from Germany. He's a money coach called Bodo Schäfer, and
Okay.
he brought up this example that you can compare every living being with a plant, and a plant has only two states. It can grow or it
Mhm.
can die. And the same concept he tries to tell everyone to implement in the life is you're rather growing or you're dying. There's
Yeah.
it's like this automatic stairs, but there are the flat
Mhm.
ones on airplanes,
Yep.
the one that
Yep.
are electric, but not the stairs, just the flat ones.
Yeah.
And he always says life is like standing on this thing, but it goes in the opposite direction of where you want to go. So if you just stand still, you go back, move backwards always. And you have to like keep going. And if you really want to achieve something, you have to start running.
Yeah.
And I kind of really like this concept, since understanding that time goes by super fast and you really have to do what interests you, just like not wasting time on doing the same day over and over and over again. Just try out new stuff, be open, like try out different hobbies and whatnot.
Yeah.
And yeah, this visual, imaginable story of him really was kind of an eye opener for me.
Yeah, I really love that concept of like you're either growing or you're fading away or dying, right? Because I think it does kind of put things in a factor of like what are you doing for yourself today to
Hmm.
grow? And I think to be able to acknowledge that maybe you're not growing or you're not doing well, that in itself is not always that simple, right? There's a lot of mental health implications of being able to do that.
Hmm.
But I think if you're in the place where you can acknowledge that, you can really grow a lot too, and you can really change a lot of how you're doing. And I think like I love your example about like I don't know what they're called, but like the people movers in the airport, right? And
Yeah,
like running
exactly.
against it. And the reason I really love it, and I hadn't really thought of it like this, but like like I was like my spouse and family and we were in the
Mhm.
airport. We were going to visit family over the holidays, and there were some teenagers that were running backwards on the people movers, and they looked like they were having the best time
Yeah.
ever. Like this is great. This is so much fun. So like that, like what you said, like reminded me of that, and it kind of connected to this piece that like sometimes in life, not always, but
Mhm.
sometimes in life, the most fun is when you're running against something. Like
Yeah.
there is an obstacle,
Mhm.
and like you could begrudgingly try to sprint and be like, I'm gonna make it to the end of this,
Mhm.
or you could be laughing and giggling and working together, right?
Mhm.
So that like it's like this interesting piece played out in my head of like sometimes life struggles can be a lot of fun if you have the right mindset.
Yeah, it is. And as you mentioned, the with the mental health aspect, it's kind of what I really realized over the last decade, is that you really cannot feel bad when being in a movement constantly. It's
Yeah.
and there are like always two sides. I know people that kind of have their struggles, try to distract themselves from the struggles with like binge watching TV shows or taking unhealthy habits. But in the same way, let's say you're super depressed and really not feel well. And I'm not a psychologist, but
Sure.
I'm 99% sure that this will work for everyone. If you start getting let's say, a workout routine and just hit the gym 3 times a week, give it this routine of a positive distraction.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot like say it as an expert, but working out pretty hard kind of let this dopamine flow in
Yeah.
a supernatural way, because you don't have this dopamine boost when doing the workout, but the day after or just like some hours after, and you kind of feel that you have accomplished something.
Yeah.
Even if you're not thinking actively about it, it makes you feel better.
It absolutely does, and I'm a big fan. Like the mental health, absolutely, and the mental health benefits of working out are like proven time and time again with so many different studies. But I've always been a big fan of like, you know, of finding an exercise that you find fun, right? Because in a
Hmm.
lot of cases, like at least in America, kind of the zeitgeist is, or like the spirit
Hmm.
of it is always that sometimes exercising isn't fun, and sometimes it's a pain,
Hmm.
and sometimes it's something that you just have to do. So like I've always been of the mindset personally for myself is like I have to do something that doesn't feel like exercising.
Yeah.
Um, so like over the last couple of years, I have started lifting, and that has been fun. But for most of my life, like that type of stuff wasn't. So
Yeah.
I started doing like indoor rock climbing
Hmm.
maybe 15 years ago, and I still like on and off again I'm doing it, but like I've been doing it a lot over the last couple of years, and it's like I'm playing, right? I'm going to the gym and like I'm not working out, like I'm just playing. And for
Hmm.
some people, like, oh, I go play soccer or football with my friends, right? Or I go play basketball with my friends. It's like if it feels like working out, it's going to be hard to do it.
Yeah.
Some people really love lifting and working out, like I said, I do now after time. Like I
Hmm.
really have grown to love that, but it's got to be fun. And if it's not fun, not like what's the point, but like it's going to be a lot harder to like get on the treadmill,
I
so to say.
couldn't agree more. But with working out, you can take so many different examples. Just
Yeah.
some people love to go for a run.
Hmm.
I used to love that when I was younger, but not anymore. And also, different sports. There are like so many different sports that you can just do, and we can break it down to just like being in a movement, no
Yeah.
matter what, really helps with the mental health and like also the dopamine setup. And I guess the worst that we have in our time now is this whole doom scrolling society.
Yeah.
It's so weird just like walking the street and really seeing people on their phone while being outside and just like going over crosswalks. I don't know
Yeah.
which country it was, but one country started to put the green and red light signs for when moving the crossroad on the ground, so people see it when.
Interesting.
Um, I'm really not sure what country it was, but I heard about that in a podcast recently. I listened to so many different, so yeah, this is something that really kept in my head, and that's so weird. I
I
mean,
mean, it is tricky, like the glued to phone situation, right? And I think the reality is like these phones, like they're made like slot machines, right? They're
mhm,
made for you to want more. So
mhm,
like I oftentimes, like whether it's myself or whether it's someone else, like if someone's glued to their phone, I'd be like, you know what? Like they're trying their best,
mhm,
but it's really hard. Like if you've ever been to a casino or whatnot, like it's really hard to walk away from the slot machine because you
mhm.
pull it and it's like, what if I win big? Oh, there's cool, fun lights and everything's right. And
Yeah,
like so, like phones and technology is designed for you to want to stay on it, right? So it's like it's really hard as a
it
human to
is.
like step away.
But the thing is, with the doom scrolling on TikTok or Instagram, you cannot win anything. You really cannot win anything. I mean, with the casino, there's like this extra
True.
goal that you can hit the jackpot, but doom scrolling the half afternoon just because it's a Sunday and you don't set up any goals to accomplish, it's just like a massive waste of time.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, sometimes I even you need like a break from reality, and there's absolutely nothing wrong about that. It's
Yeah.
just having it balanced with your real life uh, is, I guess, a super important thing, because
Yeah.
who does not love having like a half a day of just playing video games?
Yeah.
And then if you're doing it like once a week, okay, pretty cool. You spend 6 hours in front of your console, but doing it every day for 6 hours
Yeah.
is really not helpful at all. And
Yeah.
I love gaming a lot, but sometimes, especially as an adult, because when you was a child, your parents always told you, yeah, you played enough, turn off the console and TV, go play outside. And as a child, you don't understand that. But when growing up, you start realizing that they were completely right about that. And that's actually something that I realized really maturing is to accept that your parents and grandparents were right in like 9 of 10 times.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are bad examples of like, yeah, bad childhoods and stuff, but
Sure.
most of the time I would say they were right with this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And moderation is just, I mean, you're totally right that like moderation is important with everything. And I know at least sometimes like with work culture, that's not always, that point's not always gotten across. But like even as like music producers, right? Like there's been times in my life where like all I'm doing is producing music,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's like you're in front of a screen all the time. And honestly, like to a certain extent, like you're rewarded for that. Like the really good music producers or the people that are seeing tons of success in a lot of cases, like they've put in so many hours sitting
Mm-hmm.
in front of that screen to get where they're at, right? And like that's really cool, but at the end of the day, like as a music producer, sometimes it's so important to step away and just be
Yeah.
like, listen, there's something outside of this little screen,
Mm-hmm.
outside of Ableton or whatever DAW you're using, right?
Yeah,
um
exactly.
but it's tricky because like if you work a ton at your job and you work more hours in, a lot of jobs will be like, that's awesome, keep doing that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, and I would say this is like a special concept, let's say, when creating something, when doing art. It's on the one side you need that many hours of experience, and the reward can sometimes be invisible. Let's say
Hmm.
you're a music producer, you work really hard, even though if you're not hitting like billions of streams, like let's say Drake or someone, even
Yeah.
if you like really hit some listeners and kind of improve their life. Let's say someone is going through a hard time and they discover your music and totally vibe with it, and it helps. Then you still accomplish something that you probably never, you will never know. I would say nearly, yeah, it doesn't happen that the people then reach out to you and tell you that as
Yeah.
a direct feedback. And when it happens, it's a stunning moment. But with creating art, there is like, yeah, it's different than just like playing video games for 10 hours. Even though
True.
there are people, esport gamer, that making good money out of it and it's their job in the end of
Yeah.
the day to play video games. But even then, most of the really professional ones got like personal trainers that sends them to gym, going for a workout, and then you have to restructure it when you're not seeing this creation of music as a hobby. Then you have to see it as your second job, or if you're a full-time producer, just treat it like your job. I saw this
Yeah.
really fun clip of this one rapper who worked on a song with Eminem, and he told the story that, yeah, morning at 9 Eminem came to the studio, Around lunchtime, he went out for a 1 hour break, came back to the studio. They recorded. The song was nearly done. But at 5 p.m., he just like put on the jacket and went. And they're like,
Right, like,
don't we want to finish the song? We are like so close to finish it. And he's like, nah, come tomorrow morning again. And then he just like left the studio and went for his daily life and really treated it as a 9 to 5 standard job. I didn't know that. I just saw this clip like this week. It was super interesting for me. And I guess it's also important to take these breaks. Also, take a week or a month break from making music just to like get a soft reset before end up doing the same song over and over again, you know?
No, absolutely. And I think like, you know, like that idea with Eminem, you know, with music and with artists, like there's so many different ways to have success or to you know to have goals. But like I think some of my friends that I have that like do produce full time, and some of the ones that have been, you know, like successful, whatever that means, right? Like a lot of them are honestly like really good project managers. So like you talk to them about what their schedule is like, and they're like, cool. So I get up from this time and I make music from this time or this time, and then I do my business from this time to this time, and then I do this from this time to this time. Now there's also some people that are really good at like maybe they're artists and they're a little bit more flowy and they know, like, I mean, they're everyone's an artist in that sense, but like maybe they're a little bit more flowy and they know that, so they interpret their life like that. And there's ways to be successful that way. But like honestly, like especially as like a music producer, right? Because a lot of the times as a music producer, especially outside of the pop genre, like whether it's lo-fi or electronic music or whatnot, it's one person doing the work. And they're oftentimes, especially if they're smaller, they're making the music, they're DJing the music, they're putting it on playlists, they're doing the business, like they're doing everything, right? So you have to be a really good project manager to have a happy balance of that, right?
Especially when it's comes down to you making all the work, and most of the musicians are doing this. There's really important to keep everything balanced. There's it's totally out of reach, this example, but there's this one quote of Rockefeller, one of them, who said, who's working 8 hours a day has absolutely no time to make money. And you can implement that on making music. If you spend your whole day just making music, but not take off some hours to do the marketing, to reach out to playlists or whatnot, nobody's gonna hear it.
No, absolutely,
and that it's super weird actually when you're doing music and you really have to get into this business side. But it's important in the end of the day. But it depends if you just want to make it as a hobby and really don't care about what happens with it. If you just love the creation and do it fully for yourself, then it's something completely different.
No, you're right. And I think that's such an important piece of music production is like, what do you want it to be? Like knowing what you want it to be personally and then like building your life around that, right? Like there's been points in my life where I wanted to be a music producer full time, wanted that to be my career. But I've also been fortunate that like this work that I do, like I work for a nonprofit. I do like I've mentioned earlier, I do a lot of energy and climate stuff. I really love that, right? So I've been fortunate where I can have a job that like a job that I go to from my 9 to 5 that feels really good. And then for me, like as a music producer, like even though I've been doing it for like, you know, 15, 20 years at this point, like success is like however small the paycheck is at the end of the year from Spotify, one comes in. And for me, that's like, that feels so good. Whether it's like a couple hundred, whether it's a grant, like a couple grand, it's amazing because it's validating. But I think also the irony that I've kind of discovered too is that like as validating as that is, what really feels the coolest and the most special, this kind of hits at something you were saying earlier, is like when I'm scrolling on my Spotify for artists on like the playlists I'm on, it's the playlist where it's like, hey, my track is on George's I Hate Work playlist, right? Like when you see it's on someone's personal playlist that they have for something in life, or like, hey, homework playlist for Mike or whatever, like that feels way more special sometimes than like the big playlists, right? And in order to get on those small playlists, you kind of like these individual playlists, you kind of got to get on some of the bigger playlists. But like that feels so special when it's like, oh, someone put me into their daily routine. As a listener, like that and how many different countries your music's been listened to, those feel so much better than like a paycheck.
Yeah,
at least
I can agree on this point.
The job, right? So
I can totally agree on this point. And let's say 90% of the new coming artists, or let's say successful artists, even with millions of streams, you cannot just like live from this. So if you really want to take this as a business, you have to do so much more, like offering a mixing mastering service or making music for advertisement or whatnot. And for me, it's totally not interesting what I really learned to get into this. I really want to go full-time producer as well. And I'm kind of struggling because when I imagine the situation, just end up spending more time doing mixes for others than just like creating music. That's kind of frustrating on the one side. On the other side, if it's manageable to make a job like this and really keep your schedule right, so you're making 9 to 5 and use your free time to make music, that could work out. But I don't know if you really want to take that extra 2 hours to stare into your DAW for another 2 hours after being on this for like 6 or 7.
It is an interesting conundrum for sure, right? Like, let's say, like you're saying, like, oh, I would love to be a full-time music producer, right? But then I'm concerned about I'm concerned that all the other things I'm going to have to do in order to make that a full-time job is, going to pull away from my ability to do the music production part. But like, it's kind of interesting because like my friends that do this full-time, like, you're right, they do a ton of stuff. Like, it's not that they're making music, it's that they're making music and they're DJing and they're making their own clothing for their brand, and they're doing mixing and mastering. It's like, but like, and that's like, sometimes it's like, but that pulls away from the goals of what I have. But like, as being someone who's worked in nonprofits for years and years and years, a lot of the times a really healthy nonprofit has and honestly businesses in general, but like a really healthy nonprofit has a diverse revenue stream, right? So it's not like hey, we're a nonprofit, we have this one grant from this one organization and that's what keeps us going. Some that is the case, and that's fine in a lot of instances, but honestly, like the organizations that really, really thrive are like, hey, so we have like 20 different revenue sources coming in, so that if any cuts off, we're good. And like, totally, as an artist, it's the same way. Like, if I'm a music producer, like, you got to think like a business, right? Like, what if my Spotify streams out of nowhere just cut out, and now I no longer have the Spotify revenue? How do I keep floating? How do I keep thriving, right? So it is kind of tricky because, like, as someone who wants to just produce music all day, it's like, right, but like, that's not what my company that I work for does. They have music, they have sources coming from all these different places, right? And if you're investing in stock, it's the same, right? You don't invest in one stock, you got to invest in like 30 stocks, right?
You need a big diversity stock portfolio. Yeah, I totally see that point. Personally, I'm like in this finding situation. Yeah. And I actually, before the winter holidays, registered a company for like a self-employed company. Because I thought it would be pretty cool to mix and master podcasts for others, because I love listening to them. And the work would be fantastic to do. Then I tried to make like some organic reach outs, like cold DMing podcasters and stuff, and I really hate that for real.
Okay.
And now I thought about just like making one good ad and leave it running for the whole year with a decent budget, just to see that when work comes in, that it's not just a loss situation. That would be a pretty interesting thing to do, to move from the 9 to 5 working as an electrician to be more in the studio. But somehow I really plan to use the 2 weeks holiday break from my 9 to 5 to really get into that. What I end up doing is making this podcast and a lot of different stuff just not working for that. And it's kind of weird. I really have to do something that the inside of myself feels good about it, even though I would love to do this work, you know what I mean? If I have to, I get like this opportunity that someone comes down and says, hey, let's do the mix and master for my podcast, I would really love doing that. Just this whole marketing strategy side of this business is super weird, especially here in the German-speaking area. The people are ignoring the fact that there's such a thing, and that's actually important for them to make a quality podcast. Because I reached out to companies doing that, talking about like some internal company stuff of them, and in my opinion, it's like bad advertising having a bad sounding podcast to have it as like to show the company, like communicate to the outside world. But there's, the most are really not getting that point. And after some discussions with companies, and they're like, I really don't care about this.
Interesting.
Like, okay, probably
like, you're not the right fit then.
Yeah, and probably it's just like too fast now, because there's no need for this service here around. And so I keep like having this and start like running ads for it passively without me doing anything, only like reply to emails when someone is interested, and just wait till the time is ready for people to get this how do you say, conception? Is that the right word? If they then get it, that's actually an important thing to present their companies in a podcast, that this is like not just nice to have, but it's actually important to get their quality right. But
I wonder if like, so a lot of what I do, outside of music production, it's a lot of like working with community groups, and it's a lot of like learning what they really are looking for. And the key piece is like, and it's hard. It's really hard to do this, but the key piece is like really making sure that like I'm asking the questions that like really get at what they need. So like I wonder, like, if you're in situations where people are saying like, you know what, that's not like you're talking to a company and they're like, yeah, but that's not what we're looking for. Like, what are they saying they're looking for, right? That's always the key piece, is like, well, if I'm not providing what they're looking for, then what do they need, and how do I fill that gap, right? With like podcasting, that's tricky.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't want to like offer different services. It's just like
true.
Because I know that I would love to do the work, and therefore my questions are most of the time just like, how important is the song quality or the sound quality to you? And some say yes, but they don't want to invest in it.
Oh yeah.
And some say like, yeah, it's okay, I'm pretty happy with it. And then you check the podcast, and it's like a ton of reverb in the room that you can easily remove with
Yeah.
if you're a producer, or just like having super unbalanced two microphones, that one is super loud, one is kind of quiet, and all that small stuff that they actually also could do by themselves, not professionally, but also like doing a little bit of this balancing would already make the quality feel way better. And some just don't care about this at all. But on the other side, I have this one customer that I know from the construction working job of
Okay.
mine.
Yep.
I renovated the house for him, and he's running a podcast for his company, and is
Okay.
totally aware of this topic and how important that is. And he just like texts me like, yeah, I really need that. And so at least I have my one first customer, just
That's awesome.
to have this business running and not getting forgotten. But I guess
So that's awesome.
for now, I'm just gonna focus on making the podcast, releasing music, and all that stuff.
Let your work show for yourself. Do you mind if we take one quick pause? I got to go
Yeah,
check
sure.
something, and I'll be right back.
Okay, that's perfect.
Good timing. I think we sat down at the same time.
Yeah, actually, yes. Yeah, we're overtaking a bit of the time, but if you're cool, we just keep running for a bit.
I'm good. I'm good until I'm good for another 30-ish minutes. So, and
Yeah,
of course,
at
feel free
max.
to cut as you need, and whatnot. And if there's topics we haven't gotten to, let's
I actually
jump
would
in.
not cut. Will only cut the pause. Yeah. Then I would say now we're back. Let's continue. Yeah, I have like 4 more questions on this 10 Qs that I wrote down, but
Yeah.
it's also cool if we don't get over all of them. But it's a good moment after the break just to take a new topic, keep it fresh.
Yeah.
And that's I don't know why I have wrote this one down, but what's in your opinion the most underrated instrument?
The most underrated instrument. I mean, I think this will show my bias, but drums, right? Like I'm a drummer, so I'm gonna always say drums, right? And so the part of it is like growing up, like the amount of power that the drums have, whether it's like to set the tempo, to set the flow, to set the vibe, the amount of soul you can put into drumming, the amount of feel that you can put into drumming that really sets the vibe for everyone around you is so important, right? And whether that's like as a drummer, like who's sitting on a drum set or playing some sort of conga or something like that, or if it's as like a music producer where like the drums are so important. And some of that might be kind of spilling over from like electronic music and dubstep where it's like the drums are so heavy, but with lo-fi, like the drums are so crucial too, right? So yeah, that's what I would say is my underrated. And I'm as a drummer, you know, I'm gonna have some bias there.
I totally get that, but I would never imagine the drums as an underrated, because it is so important, as you just said, in I guess nearly every music besides classic. They usually don't have drums, but also they don't have like a fixed time signature. Yeah, drums are super important.
Well, and I think like sometimes like people like drums, yes, drums aren't always underrated, but I think sometimes like as a drummer growing up, like it still feels really niche. But some of that I'm starting to like see get broken out of. I think one good example, if you've ever watched, so Drumeo is a brand and they have a YouTube channel, and they've been doing a lot of these things on their YouTube channel where they bring in a famous drummer and they have a famous drummer you know, like listen to a track without the drums and then try to fill in their own pieces, right?
I have discovered that recently. Yeah, I have really discovered that recently. I guess it's exactly this channel. It was, I guess, the drummer of Slayer, and there was a Red Hot song playing, and he really fighted with start crying because it was such an emotional song. That video really hit me hard.
Well, and that's, I think, one of the things they're doing so well is like, well, I wouldn't always say drums are underrated. I'd say it's something that like your everyday person maybe doesn't think too much about when they think about instruments. But Drumeo is doing a really, because like in the comments, all you see is like, I'm not a drummer, never have been, but I watch these videos every time they get posted. So like Drumeo is doing a really good job of like exposing the non-drummer world to drums and how cool they are.
Yeah, I can agree on this. For me, like a super underrated instrument is the organ.
Ooh, yeah.
And this I discovered through a song. It's a German ska punk song.
Okay.
And I have this live CD. I also saw them live. I guess it was my very first concert with 16. We have this one club that you can go with 16 already. Cool. And they played there. And yeah, in the one intro of the live CD, he says like, this is the most underrated instrument. And then they had this super funky ska punk song, and the organ came in so nice. And I kind of kept that in my back head.
Yeah.
Because it's, you don't see it really often.
No, you don't. But as like a ska punk kid myself, the organ makes it, you're right, the organ makes a huge difference, right? There's a band that I really love that's, you know, started bubbling up the last couple of years called the Interrupters. And they usually have amazing organ, right? And so much so that like one of the band members of the Interrupters often has played organ for other groups and toured. And it's like when that organ hits in, especially with the punk ska song, you're like, oh yeah, like that's the vibe. Like it's the final, it's the glue that pulls everything together. You're totally right.
Yeah, and he said it that funny. I just remember, if there's an instrument made by the devil himself, that would be the organ. That's a quote of him. Yeah, it's a cool band called Broilers. It's actually translated a slang word for this half chicken that you can buy for food. It's really fun.
I'm going to look them up.
I can send you the link afterwards. They are super cool, but you probably won't understand the word because it's all in German. But yeah, instrumentalization of them is great.
I mean, that's sometimes what's cool about ska. I think Ori Ska Band from Japan's a really popular ska band that like I don't know most of the words they're saying, but like they're great.
Yeah. Sometimes music speaks its own language and you don't really have to understand. Even you can feel the lyrics without knowing what they mean. That's so magical about music.
Yeah.
And then let's come to the next one is,
let's do it.
What's in your opinion the best invention in history?
Ooh.
What was the best invention?
The best invention in history. This is tough.
Yeah.
I think for me, there's a lot of things I can go with, but I think I'll go with the internet. And I think one of the reasons I think the internet is probably one of the best inventions in history, at least in our modern world, is because it brings people together, right? For example, without the internet, like since I've started digging into lo-fi and getting into, you know, Discord channels and DMing other producers, like we're having a conversation across the world right now, right?
That's true.
Like this is so cool, right? And it's going to go on the internet for a ton of other people to watch. And I think there's something so powerful about that, of connecting people. And since I've started doing lo-fi, like I'm like, this is great. Like I'm doing collaborations with people across the world, people in Australia, people in, you know, Germany, Sweden. And I'm like, my life wasn't like that before I started DMing people and whatnot. And so like, that's why I, at least for this example, I say that, like, for this podcast, I say like the internet, because like it makes really cool things happen with people that you never would have had the chance to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This this really changed the world. And I guess even though there are bad sides, the main thing about the internet made life so much easier and better to live.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, as a music producer, like, I haven't gone to school for any of this. Some have, and I have friends that have. I didn't go to school for any of this. I learned all of this online. And I think that's the case for a lot of music producers, right?
Same.
You could become a professional music producer by just time spent producing and time spent watching videos.
Yeah, exactly. And also when you're not going to a one school that teaches like this one typical style, then and end up sounding as everyone who went to the school, kinda. Just in the mix and mastering process, that kinda, doesn't make it stand out from the big crowd of music producers. I think it's so important to just know the basics and then really dig into implementing your own workflow to make your own style out of this. Otherwise, it just gets boring.
I mean, that is absolutely the key, is like coming upon your own style. And I think that's a journey that, like, as music producers, we always stumble through, right? There's points where like I have my own style. There's points where I don't. With Cornerian, I have specific things that like are my style. But like finding your style, honestly, that's probably one of the most important things about being a music producer, right? And there's lots of ways to do that, but like my favorite way is like open up and just start experimenting. Maybe sometimes it's full tracks, but a lot of the times it's like just get like a bunch of ideas. If I can just like pop a bunch of ideas together over the course of a couple months, then like I start looking for similarities and things that I like, and then you start developing a style that way for sure.
And I guess it's a super overthinked topic because nearly everyone is telling you that you need to get your own style, and I guess a lot of artists overthinking that. I mean, the way you mix your drums could make you unique from everyone else. If you experimenting just with that and have this one element having like a consistent feeling, even though the sounds are different, you know, you don't use the same snare on every track, obviously, but you mix them in your personal taste. It doesn't have to be something huge. You don't have to create every synth sound by yourself, not using presets or samples at all. It's none about that. Sometimes it's just like this one specific reverb plugin that you love and use it all the time just because it really fits to your personality somehow. I have like 2 reverbs that I'm using all the time, and I have absolutely no need to change that because on a different instrument, it's still something new. It's not like you don't have to come up every time with completely a new workflow. If you have a compressor that you like and that adds some characteristic to the song, just keep using that, and this is already enough to have your style then. But for me,
that's a really good point.
For me, it comes down to the mixing where you give it the character.
I mean, you're totally right. And I think that's a really good point that like oftentimes, like especially when I was a younger producer, that was always the advice, like find your own style, man. And it's like really kind of an infuriating thing to hear sometimes.
And overwhelming, but, like, I guess.
Yeah, and overwhelming. And I think to your point, I think like almost like the advice I'd offer for that is, yeah, sure, find your own style. But sometimes your own style is just like time, like doing what you love, making music plus time equals own style. Like, so for me, like a lot of how I mix and master is very electronic music, dubstep, like house music based, right? Because that's where a lot of my formative knowledge is. So like in lo-fi, I still think like that. So then you're right that the reality probably is that my music's going to sound a little different because like my brain automatically goes from that electronic music producer perspective with, of course, some tweaks for lo-fi. But you're right. So it's like my own style is like time plus patience equals own style. So if you're a producer out there watching this and you're like, come on, man, like, I don't know about, be patient, keep
Yeah.
making what you like. Over time, maybe your style will develop naturally, or maybe you'll discover like a specific plugin you like and your style becomes evident immediately. But it will happen with time.
And as a producer, I can just add to this, your first, let's say, 50 to 100 songs will sound bad. No matter what.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely not a single reason to be stressed about this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there was a classic dubstep producer that was formative to me. His name is Dr. P with Circus Records. He recently posted on his Instagram, I think, a couple songs of like, hey, y'all, I've been at this for like 20 plus years. Here's some of the first tracks I made, right? Some were good, some weren't, but the reality is like those producers you look up to, every single music producer has beginning tracks that do not sound good. Everyone started there. So like never feel bad about where you're at because everyone starts there. You're totally right.
That's like this. And that's already the second last question I have here.
Okay.
That's this time it's not a deep one, it's just super flat one. Just about one of your favorite gadget or clothes or accessoire, something super basic that you always have with you when you go out of the house, and not the key, wallet, and phone, obviously.
Okay, so like what's a important gadget to my daily life that's like maybe like out of the standard gear?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a really good question. I don't know if I would necessarily call it gadgets, but like something that something that's kind of been incorporated into my style, so to say, is like I always have like my lanyard attached to my keys. I have a bunch of different lanyards that I like clip on depending on like what my mood is, or like bandanas. As I've gotten older, like I've accumulated bandanas, and I'll like throw a bandana out of the side of my pocket, and like I pick a different one based on what I'm wearing for the wardrobe. It's kind of my style. Sometimes I make it into like a handkerchief. Sometimes it's out of the pocket. But like for me, like that's a pretty defining that, or my hair, right? Like the colored hair. Those are always like defining. Like I don't know, like gadgets are like accompaniments to like who is Lucas, you know, on a daily basis. Is like what's in my pocket, like as far as like a bandana goes, what's in my hair as far as the hair color goes.
Yeah, that's nice. And it's such a not basic thing, like with the bandanas. But yeah, bandanas are cool. And it's kind of, I can already imagine you behind the drums, you know, with the bandana on. I really got that picture in my head now.
Nice. That's perfect.
Pretty cool. Love it. Yeah, I just want to have like one more, I don't know the English word. Let me Google it real quick. Just to not say something completely stupid.
We've all been there, right?
Yes. From German to English. Oh, wait. Superficial?
Yeah.
Like a superficial question.
Right, like it doesn't really matter. It's just like it's something that's not important, but it also is like, yeah.
Yeah, I sometimes love to watch these videos, you know, from the rappers. Then they ask them like 10 daily life items that they...
Oh, yeah. What's your daily carries?
Yeah, exactly. Kind of inspired from this.
Yeah.
Cool. For me, it's like this ring on the pinky.
Okay. Yeah.
It's the same as my tattoo. That was my first producer logo, and it really meant much to me. I switched like the producer name 3 times now, but also started in the electronic topic. First like electro overall, super open, not really bonded to a specific genre. And then went into the melodic techno and end up doing lo-fi chill beats.
Yeah.
And yeah.
No, so it's the ring is your everyday carry, and it's connected to like your music, like your whole like kind of like your like previous personas.
Yeah, exactly. I
I love
have
that.
let it make from a jeweler, uh,
Okay.
and
Yep.
and it's the logo that I also tattoo it here. That's
That's so cool.
and I can like yeah, I feel bad when I forget it at home. I usually don't take it off, but I have to because after getting it, I kind of wear it for 1 year straight, and I put it off and hadn't wear it for 2 days, and my skin really went bad.
Oh,
I could not wear a ring then for like half a year because it
okay.
yeah, the skin got really bad but after removing it. And
Okay.
then it got like some fresh air and it really looked horrible.
It's like, what is this air stuff? I'm not used to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can really not go outside the house without this. Would feel super
Okay.
bad. I don't know
Yeah.
why. And
It's a part of you. And when you don't have it, then the part of you is missing, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's from old jewelry from like my dad and grandma that both
Okay.
passed away, and then this was melted in and reconstructed in something new. So it's also got
That's so cool.
this aspect of of this family connection as well.
That I mean, that's some of the coolest thing about rings, right? Like I have rings and stuff that I wear too,
Hmm.
and like every one has a story and a personal meaning behind it,
Hmm.
right? And so you're right. There's something magical to like look at your hands and be like, it just brings a lot of warmth to you, brings a lot of
Yeah,
memories. That's really cool.
yeah. Okay, and then we're already at the last question, and you have
Yeah.
answered it already
We'll
before.
do another. I'll give you another answer. We'll just
Yeah, exactly.
answer for days.
An eye-opening moment that you had in 2024.
Okay, so I think for me, let's see, eye-opening moment for me in 2024 is, so I think some of it comes from like we're in like being totally honest, like we're in very tumultuous to like we're in very tough times right now, right? Like in the world, right? Like whether it's America, whether it's other countries, there's lots of really hard things happening, right?
Hmm.
And I think like me and a lot of other humans, it's really easy to be like paying attention to what's happening in the news, getting overwhelmed, all that stuff, right? And I think I hit a breaking point in 2024 where like I was just like, I can't
Hmm.
anymore. Like I can't pay attention to stuff. I can't. So
Hmm.
like I had kind of like a almost like a I don't know, like a rediscovery moment. Like I think, through conversations with my spouse, with my friends,
Hmm.
family and stuff, like I kind of came to a conclusion that like I can't, like I gotta block things out. And some of it is like because I work in climate and energy
Hmm.
and stuff, like when I go to work from a 9 to 5, like I already feel like for my heart and soul, I'm doing stuff
Hmm.
that like for me, I feel fortunate that like I feel like it's making a difference, right? So I've kind of been having to, and it's not easy because like we've talked about, like social media really wants to absorb you
Hmm.
in, but like blocking things out,
Yeah.
right? So like as I've gone into 2025, I've really kind of gone with this idea of like I have three focuses, like. I got to focus on me. I got to
Hmm.
focus on my family, and I got to focus on my marriage, right? And
Hmm.
then like if I'm lucky, maybe community, right? But like if these three things, if myself, my marriage, my family, if they aren't good, then like then like what am I going to do? And a
Hmm.
lot of that is in the intentionality of like there's a lot of things happening in the world that are outside of my control that I
Yeah.
personally can't or don't have the capacity to
Hmm.
do anything about. So
Hmm.
all I could do is focus on those three things and like go from there. So I think that was a pretty big realization for me, was like what's in my control,
Yeah.
and how do I focus on that and get rid of the negative stuff, or at least not try to not pay attention.
I can totally agree on that point, and I totally understand the thoughts behind that. Like, only take control of what you only worry about things that you can control. That's
Yeah.
the Stoic philosophy. Actually, got this my Stoic handbook
Okay. Yeah.
from Mark Aurel, and it's exactly this. There's such a waste of energy, like worrying about stuff that are outside of this box, that you can have not an impact on it today actively. And so, yeah, by setting the focus on things that are important to you and you actually have control over it, it gives so much peace. You know, it gives you like this, you feel lucky then by focusing on this stuff and improving them will make you feel lucky no matter what. And it could be a rainy day. You cannot change that, so don't worry about it.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I think, there's a lot of reasons why I've kind of, and I've come to this conclusion, on again, off again throughout my life. But I think like a lot of it, I think has to do with like having a kid. I have a young kid now. And so a lot of things like change internally with how you process things if and when you have children, or if and when you have people that you consider to be your children. Like if you have, if your sister has a child, then you're really in their life a lot. That's a big piece too. But yeah, it was just like, hey, if I'm not okay, then it's going to be hard for me to be okay for them too, right?
Yeah.
And so like to be okay, it's like really have to like block things out.
Yeah. And you're totally right about this. So if your inner world is blooming and great, then you can give that to others. Give this positive energy to your children. It's it's like getting your own life together so you can make it you can make lives of others better too. And if you're only focusing on external stuff, it will not last long, right?
Yeah.
If you're just like let's say you get into this position where you got your first child. I cannot talk out of experience, but
sure.
It's how I imagine it. And let's say you're quitting your now day job just to get one that makes a better paying, but you're totally stressed out, overwork, make overtime work and all that stuff. And then you don't have actually the time to be there for your kids. Nobody is helped with that, right? So it doesn't make things better.
No, it doesn't. And maybe to tie a nice bow on the podcast, at least from my perspective, is like bringing it back to lo-fi. Like I mentioned, I think earlier, I'm not sure if we had started recording yet, but like one of the reasons I really like and I have liked being a lo-fi producer is because like the communities are lovely. You can DM most lo-fi producers as a lo-fi producer, and they're probably going to get back to you. They're going to be friendly. They're going to be helpful. There's like a joint goal of just like wanting to make good music and wanting to build community. And there's numerous Discord channels that are lo-fi based that are just honestly lovely people that just love music and like helping each other make music. So that's probably been some of the reason that I've stuck for lo-fi for so long, is because the community around it, when you block out all the other stuff, honestly, it's just built up of lovely everyday people that just like making calming music for others.
Yeah. I had exactly the same experience with this. And that's also why I switched my focus completely out away from this electronic scene and making parties and everything, organizing that, to really be in this healthy community, and by that I mean with a healthy attitude. It's so polite, it's really great.
Now, I mean, there, of course, like everything, there are tough parts of the community. There's a lot of money being made off of lo-fi, and with money comes potential problems. But once you start getting into some of the smaller communities, like there's a lot of great people.
I can totally agree on that. And then I would say, actually, it's kind of similar to the last question, but that's like always my standard last question to end up the podcast, is if you could give like one general life advice for the listeners. Could be anything.
Right. One general life advice for listeners. So I would say I would say my general life advice is don't forget to be in the now. And sometimes I say that just as much as for myself as I say it for the people listening. I think sometimes, like, as humans, we spend a lot of time thinking about, like, well, what if, well, what's next, well, what happened, that we forget to forget to just enjoy what's happening in the moment, right?
Yeah.
And I know I'm victim of that all the time, right? And I think, like, having a kid has really helped, reframe that for me. But like, if I'm focused about all the other stuff, then I'm missing out what's happening, right? And the reason I say having a kid is because like your kid giggles and nothing else matters except that kid giggling right now. It's a really blunt example that, like, oh, this is what matters. So yeah, it's kind of a generic advice, but for me, it really makes a difference that, like, don't forget about the now, because what's happening now is what makes life special.
And it's super important, obviously.
Yeah.
It's said so often, not because it sounds good, but because it's really important.
Yeah.
And I can remember this one picture saying that if you live in the past, you're facing anxiety a lot, you're facing depressions a lot. And if you constantly live in the future, it's the same with anxiety. And living in the moment is actually where you have to be to stay healthy in your head as well. It's totally unhealthy to always think back what happened. Oh, that one day when I was 6 and I was peeing myself in school or something. It's stupid stuff. But if you kind of take this heavy weight with you, it doesn't make the life better.
No, it doesn't. And I think, like, some of why why that's my advice is because, like listeners, like, where you are right now is exactly where you're supposed to be, right? Like, whether that's depressed, whether that's like feeling great and joyous, the reality is where you are now is exactly where you're supposed to be, and who you are now is who exactly you're supposed to be. Maybe you don't like who you are right now, but that's a lot of motivation to change, right? So like, that's why, like, living in the moment for me is so important. Like, you are special, just who you are and where you are now, and that's who will make up who you will become.
That's fantastic. That's a great advice. And on episode 5, I can probably share one as well with the listeners. Super simple. Just drink more water.
That's absolutely
so important. And I don't know, it's kind of when I'm watching the podcast back, when I'm not really cutting it, but like mixing the whole stems and everything, I always see I'm like drinking constantly, but it's so programmed in my head.
And it wasn't programmed into mine. That's something my nutritionist and I had to work through this year. We're like getting more water consistently and programming it in, because it's so important for everything we do.
Yeah, because our body is 70% water, and you're so fast dehydrated. The most people are completely underestimating that, how fast you get dehydrated. Yeah, and with this, I would say, let's say goodbye to the listeners.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Cool.